Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are investigating a literal scientific whodunit. Think about this. When data in parapsychology starts acting, well, strangely, who's the actual culprit? Is it the subject being tested? Is it, an actual ghost? Or, and this is the reality-bending twist here, is it the scientists themselves? We're going to dive right into the source material and explore exactly what happens when the observer actually becomes the observed.
So let's dive right into this core anomaly. In parapsychological research, there's this widely accepted yet absolutely puzzling fact. Get this. The identity of the principal investigator is literally the best single predictor of a psi experiment's outcome. Just pause and think about how wild that is for a second. In traditional science, an experiment is supposed to give you the exact same results no matter who happens to be holding the clipboard, right? But here, the researcher themselves appears to be the absolute most critical variable in the whole thing.
To try and solve this mystery, the academic literature basically offers two main theories. The first one is the more conventional route, called the experimenter behavior hypothesis. This is just the idea that successful researchers simply have killer interpersonal skills. They're warm, they motivate their subjects, they've got a great bedside manner that puts people totally at ease. But then, there's the much more radical experimenter psi hypothesis. This one suggests that the scientists might actually be unconsciously using their own psychic abilities to influence the outcome of their own experiments. Crazy, right?
This clash between theories is perfectly illustrated by a legendary collaboration between Marilyn Schlitz and Richard Wiseman. They teamed up for a remote staring experiment to see if subjects could actually tell when they were being watched through a monitor. Now, Schlitz is a well-known believer in these phenomena, while Wiseman is a super well-known skeptic. They used the exact same subject pool, the exact same methods, the whole 9 yards, the exact same equipment, and yet, Schlitz's subjects yielded statistically significant positive results, while Wiseman's subjects, they got absolutely nothing. The data literally just mirrored their internal belief systems. Which brings us to a really radical academic theory known as PMIR, or psi-mediated instrumental response. According to Stanford's model, people are constantly scanning their environment and can act on information or even produce a psychic effect entirely unconsciously. And why do they do it? Simply to fulfill a strong internal need or desire. So why does this matter for us? Well, think about an investigator conducting an experiment. They have this massive, intense desire for a positive outcome, right? PMIR suggests they might unintentionally use their own abilities to make that scientific wish come true, completely bypassing the actual subject in the chair.
Actually, just listen to how successful parapsychologists describe their own methods. When interviewed, they straight up admit to actively blurring the lines between themselves, the subject, and the experiment they're running. They definitely do not view themselves as these detached, objective observers standing in white coats behind a pane of one-way glass. Not at all. They use intense visualization and focus. They view their own consciousness as being deeply, inextricably entangled with the very machines they're trying to measure.
Okay, let's pivot to modern tech-based ghost hunting and see how this whole concept builds. When we look at instrumental transcommunication, or ITC, researchers are constantly using highly sensitive electronic devices to try and capture discarnate voices or signals. And guess what? They constantly encounter these totally weird technology fluctuations that completely defy standard explanations like, space weather or just faulty equipment. It really forces us to ask the big question, are these devices actually picking up on spirits, or are they acting as high-tech mirrors reflecting the researcher's own mind?
Consider this absolutely incredible anecdote from the source material. There's a modern researcher running a fully automated, highly secure random event generator experiment. Right in the middle of it, he gets a phone call from his mom, who's out playing golf. Now, she has absolutely no idea what his experiment is even about, let alone how it works. But she tells him, hey, I'm sending you positive thoughts for it to succeed. It's this completely generalized kind of fire and forget intention from someone who just has a sincere emotional interest in the outcome.
Now, here is the absolutely crucial point. That seemingly innocent, generalized intention sent from a golf course, it dramatically impacted the data. Remember, the researcher had this software set up to run fully automated, highly secure, randomized trials. Well, out of 5 blocks of trials conducted under those specific conditions, an astonishing 4 out of 5 produced statistically significant results. 4 out of 5. It strongly suggests that even with super randomization, double blinding, and automated software, you literally cannot lock out the effects of human consciousness or intention. So to see if this effect could actually manifest in the physical world, researchers decided to test macropsychokinesis.
Basically, they wanted to see if discarnates could physically interact with our environment. They set up this brilliantly simple experiment. They shone a laser beam into a target area inside a house and then just asked the discarnates to move regular household dust right into that beam. After that, they photographed the laser and used software to count the highlighted pixels, which gave them an exact measurement of the dust in the air. So they ran active sessions where they specifically asked the discarnates to move the dust, and then control sessions where they basically said, hey, do nothing at all. And there was indeed a significant statistical difference between the two. But here's the catch. The results were entirely backward. The data showed significantly more dust in the control sessions where the ghosts were asked to do absolutely nothing compared to the active ones. I mean, why on earth would the data flip like that? Well, the culprit for this totally reverse data turned out to be the co-investigators' own mind. When they mapped out the emotional states of the researchers, they found something fascinating. The co-investigator had a high belief that the experiment could work, sure, but she had a highly negative desire and negative enthusiasm for it to actually succeed. Why? Because it dawned on her that if this actually worked, it meant she had literal ghosts living in her house. Her genuine subconscious fear unconsciously thwarted the whole experiment, and that is what gave them that reverse data.
Okay, so to tighten the parameters and get rid of that pesky dust variable, they decided to seriously escalate the technology. They built this custom, totally airtight chamber fitted with a highly sensitive rubber membrane. Inside this thing, they suspended a tiny mirror and bounced a laser off that mirror to a target 10 feet away. This setup was so ridiculously sensitive it could detect just 1 cubic centimeter of air displacement. The whole goal here was to invite a discarnate to basically put their ghost hand into the chamber, touch a photograph, displace the air, and move the laser. The researchers were meticulous. They carefully monitored every possible environmental factor. We're talking vibration, room temperature, even operator intention. They ran 36 randomized trials across all these different conditions, mixing up control states and active discarnate states. And the result of all that effort? Absolutely no change. Nothing. Zero. The laser didn't budge even a single millimeter. This highly sensitive air pressure experiment yielded a flat, unmistakable 0.
But here is where it gets really fascinating. The researchers later reached out to certified research mediums to see if they could get any feedback on why the experiment totally failed. Unprompted, these mediums were able to provide surprisingly accurate details about the physical setup of that chamber. But the message they relayed back from the discarnates was just incredibly simple. They basically said, hey, the task was just too hard to perform. Which adds such a cool layer to the data, right? Was it actually too hard for a discarnate? Or was the researchers' own lack of belief in that super complex setup unconsciously shutting the whole thing down? If there is one absolutely crucial takeaway from all of this, it's this: the experimenter is the experiment. Whether we're looking at those simple, old-school card-guessing studies from the 1950s or these high-tech, airtight laser chambers we use today, the consciousness of the scientist is an active, undeniable, and deeply entangled variable in the machine. You literally cannot separate the observer from the data. So to try and solve this massive challenge, researchers have finally realized they need to measure the human mind right alongside the physical data. To do this, they've developed something called the Experimenter Effects Assessment Tool. Now, before an experiment even begins, researchers have to sit down and objectively rate themselves on 4 critical dimensions: belief, expectancy, enthusiasm, and desire. By tracking these metrics, scientists are hoping to finally map out exactly how their own subconscious mind is messing with their highly sensitive equipment. As we continue trying to quantify the unseen, we're really just left with this ultimate, reality-bending question. Think about it. If our minds are fundamentally entangled with the tools we use, and our very desires can literally shift the data of a laser beam or a random number generator, is true, objective, scientific observation even possible? Or at the end of the day, will we always just be measuring the reflection of our own consciousness? It's a profound mystery, for sure, and one that absolutely redefines the very nature of science itself.